Why? Why are you so happy this morning?
Because we're in Singapore and I can say officially, good morning, Singapore.
Yes, but I've been in Singapore for a week now already, back home. Good morning, KL, or Kuala Lumpur, or Malaysia, whichever way you want to take it.
Malaysia.
Okay,
How are you
okay. I'm okay. Had a little bit of a mental trigger just now. But we're all good. All good. So we're going to dive straight into introducing our guest this morning, right? And we have Mythili Subramaniam. And Mythili has a kind of interesting background, right? She didn't take for me would be the obvious route. She started off with an MD in biochemistry, and then you know what she did? She went and did her MBBS, right? And most of us would have thought, I think you will agree with me, Miller, that she would be a doctor, as in a medical doctor, but she then pursued a route in philosophy. Okay, so she's got a doctorate in philosophy. Specifically, her thesis was around gambling in older adults, right? So as you can see, there's a pattern forming, and we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about patterns today. Currently, she holds two roles. The two roles that she holds is one as associate professor at the Saw Swee Hock School of Public Health in the National University of Singapore. And she also is the research director and sits as the assistant chairman of the medical board at IMH, or the Institute of Mental Health in Singapore. We're going to bring Mythili Subramaniam up on stage with us. Yes. Where's Mythili? Here comes Mythili. There she is.
Hi,
Mythili. Good morning.
Good morning. Mythili, can you hear us? Mythili?
Oh dear. It was perfectly fine just now, right? See, what do you mean by trigger?
Okay. Mythili, can you hear us? Okay, she doesn't seem... Okay, I'm going to remove her and bring her back.
Okay. Good morning, Louis. Good morning, Gerald. Lovely to see you both on the show again with us. Two gentlemen who support us very much. So this is a very real example of being triggered on the spot. So do we react or do we respond, Mala?
We try and bring
We
Mythili
try.
back.
Okay.
Hi, Mythili, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Oh, no,
She can't. It was perfect. It was working fine just now, right?
Okay, so again, I'm going to get it out. You entertain the boys who are here
Okay.
first.
Okay. I need to ask Louis and Gerald if they have any questions, and they can put the questions up for Mythili before we start. Nate Kumar is here as well. Patterns. Nate says he can't wait to hear about patterns. Great. I want to see whether you are able to pick up patterns, Nate. Okay, dokie. Right. So, what do we have in store with us?
We
You're gonna try again?
Oh, Sasi is here. Walao. Sasi Dharan is here. Jason is here. So many people are here. We're a little bit stressed. We're going to try Mythili one more time. Otherwise, we're going to... she's gone. She's going to come back. All right.
Back in. Okay.
I wish you could hear my heartbeat now.
No need to hear your heartbeat, because I think I can hear mine enough already. One is good enough. Okay. One of the things that I found very interesting when we had our pre-chat conversation with Mythili, she talked about how people looking for more people are looking for help around their mental health, around their mental health, all right, because of the pandemic. So the pandemic has actually been quite useful and helpful in giving people a reason to say, hey, you know what, I need help, which I thought was very interesting, right? you think that generally if you need help, people generally ask for help. Well, that's an assumption that most of us hold, right? But when it comes to mental health, what I remember Mythili saying is that now there's an external reason why, you can say, what, I need help, Mythili. I need help, Mythili.
Mythili, say hello to us so that we know we got the help.
Hi. You have the help.
Yes.
The help sometime getting over to you because of technical problems, but we are very much here.
Thank you for
Very
persisting.
good.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I was just sharing very blatantly and shamelessly about our conversation, our pre preparation conversation, right? And I was talking about how people are. You said one of the things is that people are more inclined now because of the pandemic. They're using pandemic as an external reason to say, you know what, hey, I need help, right? So I'm going to launch into maybe that as a starting space or starting starter of our conversation, right? You being in research, you being in that space where you're dealing with a lot of data, and this is that space that you specialize in. What are trends and patterns that around mental health that you've been seeing in organizations, right? Whatever those organizations are. So, what are patterns that you see coming up that emerge maybe because of the pandemic, or maybe because without, even if the pandemic was not around, it would have emerged. So, yeah, what were some of those things?
Yeah, I think the pandemic, as I think you kind of alluded to, Sham, exposed the hairline fractures that were there already, I think, across many organizations. And as you rightly pointed out, people across many countries, not just in Singapore, but I think even overseas, people are not always willing to seek help for their mental health conditions. A lot of it is unfortunate because they do worry about how their fellow employees or their employers are going to perceive them. They might be left out of promotions. They might be even left out of gatherings. I don't know. It depends upon how open or welcoming that place is. Not that all places. So I think there were simmering underlying issues because stress and anxiety, I think, are very much part of what we are. If you look at the Singapore mental health study, we found that almost 1 in 10 people do have, in fact, a diagnosable mental health condition in their lifetime. We are not even talking about, problems which don't meet the criteria but are still mental health conditions. And enough people were not seeking help in Singapore. So we had what we call treatment gap, where people don't seek help, which was up to 80%, which we know that over time is going to affect the productivity in an organization. It's also going to affect the organization culture, right? Because once these people feel that they are not able to seek help, they may probably leave the organization for better organizations where they think better. So I think that was an existing problem with it. The pandemic, of course, made things much worse for mainly two reasons. We have to look at it in terms of the pandemic itself and also in terms of organization. So, for example, the pandemic itself caused a lot of stress and anxiety in people as to what's going to happen to them, what's going to happen to their family members. And when we did our study, we found that the number one concern that people had, during when the prevalence especially went up, like as in when COVID, there was a COVID surge even in Singapore, despite our vaccination, people were very worried as to what would happen to their family members. So there is that underlying anxiety, plus change in the form of dealing with working from home, children also sometimes schooling from home, all that happening, home-based learning was an issue for many mothers, and I say mothers very knowingly. I know fathers were also involved, but less so. And so this was going on, and then you had new SOPs. For example, we had to completely shift to an online system which we were not at all familiar with, and that also caused a lot of angst and disappointment or frustration even within research. But if you also think about organizations like healthcare or social care, where the number of people now seeking help increased tremendously and dramatically, either due to COVID itself or due to, as we talked about, mental health issues, I think that added an extra layer of strain on these organizations. But I'm looking at it very narrowly. I'm sure that other organizations, which I can't immediately think of, also had to deal with very, very a different need of their clientele, as well as trying to work online, all of which does add to the stress level in the population, and therefore the prevalence of anxiety and depression, based on our study talked about last year. I think the prevalence did go up considerably as compared to what we had before in Singapore.
Nice. Sham, did you hear Mythili's numbers? Because I didn't take it. I like numbers, right? And when we get someone so clever like Mythili, I want to take down the numbers. So I heard Mythili, 18% don't get help. But did you say one out of up to 18 don't get help? Did you say 1 out of 10?
To 10. Yeah.
One
Yes.
out of 10.
Just a correction, Malar. It's not 18. I wish it was 18. It's 80. 80.
80. 80.
Whoa.
It's 80.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot. Okay. So thank you. Sham, do you have a question for it?
No, you carry on. You carry on. You're going with the numbers, I know.
Yeah. So it's 80 now. I'm hijacked, right? But 80% they're not seeking help. That's fine. What I loved about what you said is, we are always talking about stress and anxiety. And one of the examples that you're bringing up is the underlying anxiety about what seemed to be safety because of the uncertainty that we were experiencing. That sounds normal, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, right, because organizations generally, right, we are looking at like, we are supposed to help our people because, we need the productivity. But these are your personal issues, right? You have issues in your family, you're dealing with your school-going children. These are your personal issues. And we've lived, at least in this part of the world, where we say, keep your personal problems, at the doorstep and come in, right? Now, how do organizations transition in terms of mindset? Because I think for me, it seems to be that the new generation tends to be more open because we are integrating life. We realize life needs to be integrated, right? But there are some pockets of probably leaders who are thinking like, but this is so difficult. I need to look after productivity. Now I have to look after your personal issues. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I mean, I recognize that many organizations, I won't say again all organizations, many organizations do have to care about their profit margin. It can't all be, okay, let's all do whatever makes us very happy. That may not always lead to an increased productivity, or it might impact their profit margins. And let's face it, they are also under considerable stress. They have to reply to a huge number of stakeholders. But just, I think 2 days back, I was reading about the top employers in Singapore, and one of the employers that I read about was Google, right? And this is not like this thing for Google in any way. I don't work there, that. But what I've heard from people who have worked there, and somebody pretty close to me works there, is that their work culture is amazing, not just in terms of their salary, but what I'm talking about here is caring about people as a family, making sure that when they are working late, there is food there, their needs are looked after, there's a good office which has got space where they can relax, and I think it is also a little bit about they definitely have a very, very strong employee support kind of a service which is embedded within the organization, where people can seek help for their mental health conditions, good insurance. But Google remains an extremely profitable country, a very profitable organization across multiple countries, right? So what are they doing right? I think that if you want to retain good people, and if you want people to give their best, you have to care about them. We can no longer say that, I will, leave your problems at the door. It's not my problem. I think as a manager, I don't know, I think you ladies have probably the same experience, but I think the biggest part of my job, and I think even the most difficult part of my job, is handling employee issues, or, interpersonal issues between people. And if we don't get that right, these people are going to leave us. And when they leave us, you are going to have a more difficult time getting new people in who match their expertise. You're going to have a longer time training them. But also, what about presentism? They come there, they are not interested because they are feeling upset, or they are not feeling happy with what you are doing for them, or they might be anxious, they might be worried, they are trying, but they are not able to give their 100%. Isn't that a loss to the company? The unfortunate part is, right, Sham and Malar, we have not, very few people do this kind of very in-depth analysis. On one hand, people too feel angry because they say, hey, a person is more than the productivity, which I agree. We have friends in our workplace. It's a social place. It helps us in so many different ways. But also, even if you break it down, my point is, even if you just break it down to pure productivity and profit margins, I think organizations will understand that supporting people with physical as well as mental health conditions actually gives rise to a better profit margin for them, as compared to just saying, I don't care, I don't want to hear, I don't want to listen. I sincerely feel that there is value in hearing what your employees have to say about their health.
I think it's a way of the way you put it. What comes across to me is it's a reframe for organizations in terms of how to think about this care, right? So when you put it in a term called care, it becomes this fuzzy wuzzy warm feeling kind of a thing, right? The very HRE kind of a thing that people tend to say. But if you shift the focus and you reframe it into, this is business common sense.
Yeah.
It's business common sense that you want to make sure the support is there. You set the stage for people to work at their best, to perform at their best. Then it's going to translate. So you can call it productivity, you can call it culture, you can call it whatever, right? It's at the base of it, it's business common sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think from this is my opinion, there is a divide when you have organizations like Google, who maybe to put it in my terms, would be aware, enlightened, right? To organizations that perhaps may not be so enlightened. And from a Singapore context, I think those organizations could be in jeopardy. And sometimes those organizations, unfortunately, sit in the SME space, right, who may not be so enlightened. Okay, so just concluding it from summarizing it from my perspective in Singapore. Malar, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I think you helped me think louder. So I agree that, and I think that's the problem, right? We try to make sense out of a lot of things, but I think when it comes to mental health issues, especially when you see, when you can tell I'm stressed because I've got too much of work, it's easy because you can make sense out of it. But I think the problem in when it comes to working adults, right, or working people who are working, is that how do I go and say, actually, emotionally, I'm not. I don't know how to make sense out of this. And I think two things, right? One is from an employee perspective, how do I go and tell my employer I can't deal with what's happening in my life? One. Right? Because it's my personal life. And I can't make sense out of it. I can't give you numbers to it, right? Because I can't, because it's personal on one hand. On the other hand, I'm putting myself in HR or people managers position, right? I'm actually, wondering whether, there are beliefs that they are struggling with, because I need to make sense and report numbers too. And I just don't know how, because while I think, Mythili, you would agree, there's enough data out there to say that we need healthy minds to actually produce. I think we don't need more advocacy for that. But we're still not doing it because somewhere in our system, there's either fear or uncertainty of not knowing how to deal with it, the lack of clarity, right? I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts about that?
I've actually heard, different narratives around the same issue about, how do you say it? How do people believe you? How do then they kind of, do something about it? And I think this has been, unfortunately, a fairly long-term problem, I would say, with mental health conditions, where we don't have a great biomarker for any mental health disorder, right? I can't tell you that, hey, Malar, when my XXY value goes beyond 50, I really can't function. And everybody believes and says, yes, Mythili's XXY value is 52 and therefore she needs rest. Unfortunately, it doesn't go like that, right? Which happens with, let's say, hypertension. If I tell you, oh, okay, my blood pressure today morning was 160, everybody would jump in and say, hey, why are you not taking medication? Why are you not staying at home? Why are you not doing this? But somehow when it comes to mental health condition and I say, I really didn't feel too good about it. I was depressed. I don't know. I don't even have a reason for it. I just was not able to get out of my bed and make it to office today. Wow, that sounds like shirking like hell, man. So that is the way, unfortunately, people see it. And I think that we need to get educated, both to talk about it. And I think younger people are much more open and much more willing to talk about their feelings. I also like to think that organizations, even in Singapore, are making a huge change. I would like to give a shout out to Anthea Ong, with whom I have worked in for some, issues or projects. And she has started this workplace leadership program where they feel that, if leaders are equipped and they feel comfortable enough to talk about it, either about their own health or about, have open discussions with their employees, then, the whole system changes. And I think there is a fundamental change. And what I would like to also point out is, Malar, when we started this conversation, I said 80%, and you thought it was 18% because 80 just seems so wrong, right? So 80% of the people are not seeking help. They are not telling their employers that they have a mental health condition. Do you think the 20% who dare to say it are lying about it? I would say they do it only because of few reasons where things get really so bad for them that they are not able to cope and they really, really need treatment. Or they have a really good employer at the top who's willing to listen to them. So I think faking it, yes. Any illness, any condition, people can fake it, right? I mean, you would never know. But I would say that number in people with mental health conditions would be very, very low because they are very aware that even when they are telling the truth, it has huge implications on them.
Nice.
Is it a cultural thing? So what do I mean by that? Do you find that the numbers are different, like the 80-20, right, on our part? Is that is that extremely different in let's say more open cultures or cultures where they're more individualistic or more independent, as opposed to cultures where you're very much, you think of yourself as part of a network or a family or a society, right? So do you see patterns like that?
Sham, the answer is that it is complex because the other aspect of mental health care or care in general, healthcare in general, is also how do you fund it, right? How do you fund it? Issues like accessibility become very important in in any setting, even in places like UK, which are very open and which actually have a pretty good NHS system. I'm very impressed by their healthcare system. Don't get me wrong, but waiting times can be very long. Ability to see a specialist, it might take a very long period of time, and therefore these things do get delayed and they may have also a longer period of what we call help seeking, and therefore there might be a treatment gap. But yes, generally in places where there are open cultures where people are more able to talk about it, and going for therapy is not frowned upon, or it is not considered something, oh my god, now I have to be careful around this person kind of vibe that people give out. I think definitely there more people are willing to seek help, and they do seek help in those places.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. It comes back to culture, right? So you can slice and dice culture in different ways. You've got the West versus the East, right?
Yes.
The individualistic versus the more community based, right?
Yes.
At the base, at the core of it, it's the culture. So it's the organizational culture that
Yes.
helps or empowers or disempowers a person, seeking help.
Absolutely.
To a certain,
Absolutely.
that's coming quite clearly out. Malar, you have a question.
If I may interrupt you just for a
Sure.
minute, I think culture is very, very important. You are absolutely right. At the end of the day, the most important thing is always the culture, but policies are also important, right? What I mean by that is this. Until about, I think, up to 2 years back, Singapore had a policy where employers could ask the people whom they were employing at the point of interview, at the point of, when they were first interviewing this person, they had to declare whether they had a physical or a mental health condition. Um,
Mm.
Many, and look, there are two ways of looking at it. And people with mental health conditions felt it was very discriminatory because they felt that the minute they kind of declared it, they were never called for either they were not called for the interview, or if they were called for the interview, we have actually done research on that. They said the only thing the interviewer wanted to talk about was my mental health condition and not my ability to do the job. And they feel that they don't get the job. But Singapore made a very strong move to not allow this anymore. So they said, okay, there is no need to ask this question, right? Even if the intent of the employer is to plan for services, you can ask this question after you hire the person, and the person trusts you enough to tell you about it. So I think that's a sea change in policy which has been in existence in many countries. And so I think changes in policy also make a huge difference, Sham, in affecting the culture of an organization or even culture of a country. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The SOPs, the systemic changes that support whether people are open and
Exactly.
comfortable to talk about it. Yeah, agreed.
Exactly.
Nice.
Right.
So, Mythili, when I heard 18% just now, I heard 18. All right, I was shocked that I thought there was like, you mean only 18% is not seeking help? I thought there was good news. I was shocked at the good news. So when you tell me 80%, I was like, okay, this is probably normal, right? And
Yeah.
so I wanted to say that. So I was like really shocked. I said, only 18%? You mean I've got my numbers wrong all along, is what I was thinking. And I
Yeah.
wanted to say, well done, Singapore.
You're doing
Now,
pretty good. You're doing pretty, you're doing well. The 18 is good. No, 18 is good. I agree with you. I agree with you.
yeah. And so one of those things, that you brought up, the idea of, being present at work. And I think naturally most businesses don't keep track of opportunity cost. And I think you brought that up, which I think is fantastic for leaders to think about. I think as we become more pressured to bring about
Exactly.
optimal performance, right? Which is
Exactly.
fantastic. Yeah. Now, but what is also really interesting that you spoke about, I'm just wondering if 80% haven't seek help. So I think that was a fantastic number for us to, cut away from our judgments about people who actually are courageous to say, I
Yeah.
have mental health issues. I think that puts it in perspective for people who are thinking, oh, you're seeking self pity, you're trying to get attention and you're trying to fake it, right? And, we'll park that. But what I'm thinking is, you spoke about, how do we make help available? So I'm
Yeah.
imagining, with a magic wand, everyone who has the 80% who hasn't seek help decides to seek help because we're creating a lot of awareness. There's a lot of talk about it
Yes.
at different levels, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
we're still trying to digest, okay, whether it's sitting in well for me. Now, let's assume people get help for a bit. You can just imagine the world, right? That we're getting help now. How can organization quickly equip themselves with I don't know whether it is a quick 101 to mental health help before we actually get external help. So internally, right, we need to be very sure, hey, when someone comes to me, I know how to listen to the person, right?
Yeah.
So what can organizations do to equip, whether it's HR or people managers, to say, when someone comes to me, I know what to do next, as to even if it means passing it on to an
Yeah.
external person, I know what to do.
Yeah. That's a tough question, Malar, because as I told you, I'm not, I don't have a good head for business, and I don't have a good head for organizations too. But what I'll tell you is, again, what we have heard from people. What we hear increasingly in Singapore is that multinationals actually are pretty good. They have, because, just by the nature of the fact that it's not
Google Password.
it's in multiple countries. They have good employee assistance programs, many of them. I'm not talking about all of them. They have people in HR who are well trained to kind of support them, exactly as you said. If not to say, hey, I can do this for you, at least to say, hey, you need to go to him and talk to him or her, and they can support you better. I think the problem that we see increasingly is in small and even medium-sized enterprises, where there might be very few people in, for example, in human resources who are available, who can do this kind of a job. And we have even heard of places where, human resources is actually outsourced, right? It's a smallish organization where you don't have the capacity to have everything there. And it definitely becomes more challenging there, Malar. All that I can say is that it is a process that I think we have embarked on in Singapore. The Ministry of Manpower, for example, has a workplace safety and health institute, Vichy, which for the first time is talking, in the last couple of years, they've started talking about total workplace wellness and safety, which includes mental health, wellness, and safety as well. And so I think it is not a problem that can be solved that easily. How do we get, this awareness across these small and medium-sized enterprises, where really every hand is needed on deck to do what they want to do? What support can we provide to them? Can it be again at the level of, can it be a policy that they do have a person that they could talk to? Could different organizations come together and have a common kind of a person, at least, that this person could talk to? But I think above and beyond that, don't get me wrong here, I'm not advocating that all this should happen. It should. But I think at some level, we also have to take responsibility for our own health. And I think it's just, the person with the mental health condition, but what about peers? What about fellow colleagues? I think we have the collective wisdom to do a lot of things, or at least to refer the person, as you rightly pointed out, or point the person to the right direction. Singapore is also doing one more thing, which many countries have done already, which is to have a website. Which kind of, it has to be, of course, advertised well. Everybody should be aware of it, which again kind of gives people information. So HPB is coming up with this kind of a mental health portal. You have Mindline SG, which is under MOHT. They give you a fair amount of information on, mental health conditions. What does it look like? Where can you seek help? I think that is available. And online is another. Digital health is amazing, where again I know of a few enterprises which are actually providing workplace mental health solutions, mainly through digital solutions. So again, these are ways in which small and medium enterprises can also get into the game of supporting their employees' well-being.
You brought up a very important point, right? We've been talking at a very broad level. What do I mean by broad level? At the organizational level, or at the country level, and that's important because organizations fuel the economy, right? And the country has to support the organization fueling the economy, right? And we cannot sustain ourselves if our economy is not optimal. You brought up the point that at a micro level, it's the individual's responsibility to do something if something's not right, right? Like you said, biomarkers from a biological point of view, a physical health point of view, your cholesterol is high, you got to go and, do something, right? If you don't do something, the doctor will already be telling you, okay, this one you have to take care of, and, you got to go and do this, and that, right? And the markers are not so clear with the psychological side of it.
Absolutely.
And you said the it's not just the individual, the people around you, your peers, your family, right? Let's take peers from an organization perspective. What could you share with us? What would be things that would not typically, but these are stresses, right? Or stressors that for me, it might be fine, but for someone else, you might not be so fine, and you maybe be able to pick up. You need just to pay attention a little bit more. So, from for us to take individual responsibility, not just for ourselves but for our team members, what are stressors that could trigger situations that the person may say? We may have to push that person and say, maybe you need to get help.
I think, Shamini, as you very rightly pointed out, I think stressors are many, and individually it depends from person to person, right? I always call, when a person has the first episode of whatever they have, whether it is depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it is even psychosis, in some ways, unfortunately, it's a perfect storm, right? There is vulnerability, lack of support, and along with it comes stress. So it is, a lot of issues which come together for this person to have it, and it differs from person to person. But I think for me, the easiest way for me to think about it is this way. Across all mental health conditions, if you feel that there is a change in a fellow colleague's behavior, whereas initially he was able to, perform well, suddenly he's not performing that well. Timelines are not being met, deadlines are not being met. If they were outgoing friendly and now they are no longer outgoing friendly, if they were like volunteering for a lot of things and now they are not volunteering for a lot of things. So whenever there is a change from how a person was before to how a person is now, I think it doesn't hurt to just ask the person, hey, what's going on? What we have in our focus group discussions is that people are scared to ask that question, and there are good reasons. Sometimes they feel that the other person may feel, are you like a capo auntie, as somebody described it? Do you just want to know what's happening in life? They may get affronted, they may not answer our queries, they may not answer our question, we might break a relationship. Other people are also worried, what if the person suddenly starts crying a lot or gets extremely upset? I wouldn't know how to handle the situation. They also sometimes feel that, which is sometimes, and in a way it's not really always a justified worry, but people feel, what if the person suddenly turns very angry or violent towards me just because I've asked him a question? So what I would like to also point out is that there is a fairly simple program. It's not even very expensive, and I think organizations like Silver Ribbon do it almost like at very little cost, which is called mental health first aid. So it is just like health first aid, right? So every I think organization now, again, not every, that's a stretch, but most organizations now have someone who is trained in cardiopulmonary resuscitation. There is an AED machine somewhere around in an building. So but we don't think similarly about mental health. But I think mental health first aid is a big step towards both recognizing simple things. It's not like a complex thing where you're being trained like a doctor or a psychiatrist. And what should you say? What are the words you should use to sound non-threatening but helpful? The other thing which I always tell people is, if the person is really scared, and if he's a good friend, then offer to go with them. Just say, I don't mind coming with you. I will sit in the GPs with you. I mean, with COVID, of course, that changed a lot, but now again, they're loving it. But to say that, I'm willing to sit there while you go for your first consultation, it will not be that scary. I know it's putting yourself out there, but I think we need to think about other people. Otherwise, life becomes, at least for me, very purposeless if you're just thinking about yourself all the time.
Yep. Right. I like the idea of mental health first aid. it like it comes back to that point. It's so common sense, but sometimes common sense is not so common in that sense. Yeah. Malar, I'm going to shut up and give you a chance.
Mythili, and this is really of personal interest for me, right? We know how to go and get help through the mainstream.
Yeah.
And mainstream is important because we know that they are trained to do so. Whether it's psychologists, counselors, or
Therapist.
right? But I find myself very drawn to the non-mainstream, right? And I've been trying some, and I find because a lot of times I think the mainstream tend to be very cognitive. We talk about things, right? Whereas I'm looking at the non-mainstream therapy as well, which is growing,
Yeah.
right? Which is growing, which seem to be effective. At least that's been my experience, and some of my friends have tried it, right? But you know, with any form of therapy or help that grows well, we also need to make sure we're getting the right help, because it's so much easier to get certified in a conventional way, right? And there'll be some really good ones, and because of them, a lot other people will jump into that space, right? So I'm just wondering, like how what what's been your experience, right? And this is just your experience as to the non-mainstream therapy, that people can seek help, and how to discern, actually, if it's possible to discern. How do I?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Malar, by non mainstream, I think all of us do non-mainstream things. Okay, so let me just give you a very non-mainstream, very simple thing that I always do, which is that whenever I'm anxious, I go for a walk. Right, while it's completely got nothing to do with anything in terms of like a external person, but I really feel better. My problems don't seem that much after I go for a nice long walk and I come back. And can I always rely on a walk? I know I'm making it simplistic, but I just want to give you an example. Can I
Mm.
always walk to take care of my anxiety or take care of my distress? I think to some extent it definitely helps. Sometimes even having a bowl of ice cream may help, and I'm not kidding about it. All these things make you feel good, maybe even for a short time. Okay, you get over it. You are in a better frame of mind to deal with whatever challenge comes your way. My way of looking at it is I will know that this is not enough for me when it is not serving its purpose. When despite going for my walk, despite aromatherapy, I'm still feeling pretty miserable day after day after. I think it is time to seek proper help, mainstream help. So difficult to regulate non-mainstream therapy of any type, and you might be referring to a type of therapy which is not mainstream, but people have also talked about even acupuncture, which there are some studies which show that they are effective. There is massage therapy which people feel is effective. There could be other
Mm.
things which feel, even restrictions in diet people feel are effective. So I'm not going to criticize anything because I don't know enough, and when you come from a place of ignorance, you shouldn't criticize others. So my thing to you would be that it is very difficult to certify all of them or to say, hey, this works, this doesn't work, unless there are good clinical trials. Unfortunately, I'm a scientist and I believe in that you should have a clinical trial which shows that when you put this person on this, baseline was this, person got better here, and there
Mm.
is another, you didn't put them on it, they didn't get that better. That's what I believe, but it's not always
Mm.
possible. I understand that. And so my thing to people would be, uh, see how it goes. If you are not feeling better with it, then don't fool yourself into thinking, I'll get better, I'll get better. That's where things go wrong. Try it out
Mm.
within 10 days. If you're not feeling better, go for a proper opinion, right? And again, it depends upon how severe the condition is. If it's very severe upfront, you should go. But if it is a milder form of a thing and you feel okay, I can handle it, then go for it. And if you really like this therapy, right, it may not be your main thing. Your main thing may still be either psychotherapy or it might even be medication, but you can use this as adjunct therapy. You don't have to completely give up on it. Whatever this form is, if you think it is helpful to you, please continue with it. But sometimes we need more than other the milder,
Mm.
in a way, milder forms of uh, non-mainstream therapy, which could be, as I said,
Mm.
very broadly, and we may like it and it may be helpful, but it is not enough. So there is no, again, harm or shame in going up to a therapist or even to a GP and talking about your mental health problems.
Mm. I think it's very, if I were to summarize your response, it's very dependent on your awareness, your self-awareness of you, right? We sometimes sometimes we use the term, my body will tell me if I'm fine or not, right? Or myself. So it's self-awareness in when knowing when whatever method that you're doing or using is not working for you. So you
Yes.
could go the the the, the standard way and find that at some point it may not be working for you, and it could be just that it's not the right doctor, not right fit, not the right person that you're speaking to, right? So it's listening to having very clear indications for yourself. Okay, I'm going to give myself 5 chances, and this is what I should be seeing, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then I need to make a change, essentially. Yeah. Okay. Malar, I hijacked you.
You're going to ask me to summarize, right?
Yes, I know.
But before I summarize, Mythili, I just wanted you to know I'm so excited. We both share our names. I'm Mythili Subramaniam, so I realize you're Mythili Subramaniam. I just want to ride on your intelligence. That's all.
No. I always confess to people I have a very niche area that I talk about, which is mental health. I give it to you ladies because you cover such a broad spectrum of things, and that is much more challenging than just having that in a way a tunnel vision of just focusing on mental health conditions, which is what I really know a little bit about. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
there's
want
always.
to tell- yeah.
You go carry on.
No, I
Malar.
wanted to say because Mythili keeps saying, she is only focused on this, and I think we need to hear from people who are focused on this because I think sometimes I don't know if you want to call us generalists, right? Or I think it is really sometimes we've become so corporatized.
Yes.
That oh, we're so corporatized, which is all about productivity, and it's a numbers game. I think humanity has become a numbers game, and we need. I don't know whether it's an opposite school of thought, but perhaps going back to basics at what it means to be human. And I think for that you need someone who is really specializing and focused on this,
Correct.
which is why I feel very strongly. We are very glad you said yes to this. We're very glad you said what you say, even though I know you're careful about giving context. But we hear that giving context, putting boundaries. We're so cautious about talking about what we need to talk about. And I think that's why people like you and the work you do is extremely important
Extremely important.
all the time, but especially now, because we need to hear it from the expert. We need to hear the truth because we are hiding a lot behind success and numbers and what it means to actually do
Be
good.
strong, being
Yeah.
strong, and doing and showing this facade. Right. I think we forget a lot of times. We forget what it is to just be us. And be us for ourselves and be true to ourselves in our health, overall health. I think so. I agree with Malar. We need the specialists, and thank you for saying yes to us, and thank you for joining us this morning and sharing
No.
your insights.
Despite
What
the difficulties, yes.
what the individual needs to do and what the larger broader community needs to do as well to ensure that we are well in all sense of that word.
Nice.
Word.
Thanks. So, so Mythili, I wanted to ask you, before we summarize it and call it a day, please, what else would you like to tell the audience?
No, I would just like to tell people that one of the things that organizations, people, all of us need to recognize is that because of this huge stigma around mental health conditions, because of the fact that people do not talk about it at all, what happens is that somebody may have a mental health condition, and this person may be the person you look up to the most. This could be your mentor, this could be your best employee, this could be your best friend, but you just have no idea that this person has a mental health condition, right? And so that is one of the biggest drawbacks, I think, when people don't disclose it because of the fear that how people will judge me. And so when we see somebody with a mental health condition, unfortunately we see them at their worst. What I mean by that is we see them when they are breaking down, when they are crying, when they are upset, when they are not able to deal with something. And that is the picture we carry with us, unfortunately, that, mental health, a person with a mental health problem means someone who can't deal with it. But what we don't see is all those, undisclosed warriors and heroes among us who are struggling with whatever they are struggling, but at the end of the day, they are turning out a perfect job out for a company, for an organization, as a teacher, as a mentor. And I think that is missed sometimes. So I wish that we would be more careful about judging people with mental health disorders. I also wish that in Singapore, more and more people who are doing very well feel more comfortable to talk about their mental health conditions, not just to give hope to others, but also to prove to, people who still need proving that a mental health disorder doesn't define you. It's just a part of what, yeah.
Nice.
That was
Thank
a
you.
brilliant close, Mythili. Thank you
I
so much for joining us this morning.
I
Thank
loved it. I loved it. I loved
Thank
it. Thank you, Mythili. I loved the closing. It's really nice that on a Thursday morning I think Mythili woke us up with things that we need to think about. We started off with the trends that we are looking at in mental health that we are all aware of, and Mythili threw us numbers that are real that we probably have seen over and over again. But I think what was really different is I loved because Mythili comes from really a research background, and she's so focused on mental health. She's helping us as individuals, firstly, for us to listen into ourselves, to seek the help that we need, and also discern what works for us. So really be utterly, I don't know whether I should use the word selfish or self-care. Listen to yourself and look after yourself. Look
No, I
at
think
what
selfish.
yeah. Yeah, be
Yeah.
extremely selfish in looking after yourself, because if you don't do that, and because we didn't do that, it becomes a bigger issue that we need to get external help, right? Because we wait until things go really bad, and even then, when we know we need help, we just don't go out and there and get help because of the stigma. And I think it's lovely, Mythili is helping us to put into context, that how it's important that we need to look after ourselves first, right? Get the help that you need, right? Whether it's mainstream or not, we all try the non-mainstream, because if we had done enough of the non-mainstream, we would have listened to ourselves, and perhaps we may not need as much help. But if you need, go and get that help.
Yes.
Okay, you become part of the statistics, is what she says. And as she says that, as organizations, we need people, we need every hand and every mind in it. And for that, if you want people to be present, really present, and that is the business case for us to actually look after our people. However they're coming in, you want to make sure they are not just physically present, but mentally present. The whole person is present at work, because that's where the flow happens and optimal performance happens. And for this, we all need to come together to put policies right, conversation right, and all of this will lead us into the healthy culture that is required for us to be our best versions in life. And as such, we can then give our best self to the world that we belong, and create and live in the world that we want to belong. Wow, that was my summary. Sham, are you proud?
Nicely done. Nicely done, Malarvili. And on that note,
Mythili Subramaniam, okay?
okay, Malarvili Subramaniam. Okay. And for the uninitiated, they're not related in any way other than a love or passion for the same subject matter. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. We have Sasidharan, who just joined us. I think it's the first time you're joining us. Thank you, and thank you for sharing all you've shared on the chat, Sasi. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you next Thursday, same time, different place, as in different link, and we'll have a wrap up on what we've covered this month around our planet, our health. Bye, KL. See you again.
Bye. Thank you very much, Sham, for hunting down Mythili. I have this love for people in mental health, so I'm so glad I got to meet Mythili now. All right, thank you, Sham. Love you. See you till next Thursday. Bye.
Next Thursday. Bye-bye.
And everybody, look after yourself.